Deep in the heart of the Middle East, a group of researchers were on a mission to unearth the greatest archaeological discovery of modern times. Hoping to uncover evidence of ancient civilizations, the team dug deep into the rocky soil, their shovels clanging against the hard earth. As the weeks passed, the group found themselves growing restless, their spirits dampened by the lack of noteworthy discoveries. But one day, as they worked their way deeper into the earth, they found something that would change their lives forever. The ground began to shake beneath their feet, and from deep below the surface emerged a towering giant, its massive form casting a long shadow across the arid landscape. The creature stood at least 10 meters tall, its skin covered in a thick layer of grime and dust. As the researchers looked on in awe, another giant appeared, followed by a third and a fourth. In a matter of seconds, the group found themselves surrounded on all sides by towering behemoths. The giants seemed to be waking from a long slumber, their movements sluggish and disorientated. But as they regained their bearings, the creatures began to move with a fierce and deadly grace, their bodies rippling with muscles and their eyes blazing with a fierce intelligence. The researchers were quickly overcome, their bodies torn limb from limb by the ferocious creatures. The gore was unimaginable, with blood and viscera splattered across the ground in grotesque patterns. Those who survived the initial onslaught ran for their lives, struggling to keep their footing as the ground shook and rumbled beneath their feet. But they soon realized that there was no escape, no way to outrun the wrath of the giants that now roamed the earth. The group frantically searched for weapons, turning over rocks and digging through the sand in a desperate bid to arm themselves against the massive creatures. But their efforts were in vain, for the giants were simply too powerful, their thick skin and massive size rendering them nearly invulnerable to any weapon that the humans could wield. As the hours turned into days, the researchers remained trapped under the shadow of the giants, forced to fend for their lives as the creatures roamed the land in search of prey. Some managed to band together, forming makeshift communities in the hope of surviving the apocalypse that had descended upon them. Others fell victim to the giants, their screams echoing across the barren landscape as they were ripped apart by the massive creatures. The gore was everywhere, with severed limbs and decapitated heads littering the ground like so much refuse. Amidst the chaos and devastation, a young researcher named Hannah had an idea. She had always been fascinated by ancient relics and long-forgotten lore, and had spent countless hours researching the customs and habits of past civilizations. Drawing upon this knowledge, she proposed a plan to her fellow survivors. Her plan was simple yet daring. She believed that the giants in their current state were only interested in satisfying their insatiable hunger for flesh. But what if they could somehow find a way to satiate this craving without turning on the humans? Hannah suggested that they explore the surrounding area, gathering whatever food they could find and creating a giant feast for the beasts. If they could set up a veritable banquet, perhaps the giants would be sated enough to leave the survivors alone. It was a risky plan, but with no other options available, the group agreed to give it a try. They set out into the dusty, barren landscape, scouring the land for any edible plants or animals they could find. It was a difficult task, made even more challenging under the watchful gaze of the giant beasts. Despite the danger, the group persisted, gathering everything from wild berries and roots to scorpions and lizards. They worked tirelessly, cooking up the food and laying it out on long tables for the giants to devour. As they waited for the creatures to arrive, the group held their breath, praying that Hannah's plan would work. And as the giants lumbered into view, their eyes alight with hunger, the survivors knew that their lives hung in the balance. For a moment there was silence as the giants took in the feast before them. And then, to the amazement of the watching humans, the beasts began to dig in, their massive jaws tearing into the food with a savage ferocity. As the giants feasted, the humans watched in a mixture of awe and fear, unsure of whether their plan would ultimately succeed. But as the last scraps of food were consumed and the giant beasts loomed over them once more, a sense of hope began to bubble up within them. Perhaps with some luck and resourcefulness, they could find a way to survive in this strange and unforgiving world that had been revealed to them by the emergence of these ancient giants. Hannah's plan worked for the time being at least.